and then left. It happened again on the next mission, STS-116, on December of that year, when two new warnings happened when these objects got very close to the Discovery and the International Space Station. How can we interpret this? And now we have this crash between two satellites, an impossible crash. The space trash that is in the space is not floating anywhere. It is controlled. They know exactly where every single one of these crafts or remainings of old missions are. It means that was not accidental. How can we know this is truth? Well, let's watch. Let's see, because I believe this is not going to be the last time we see something like that. In October 2007, the whole mission was observed. This is just very few videos. We have presented this in the past, but we want to prove that we are being watched in the space.
Now, with the advent of the digital camera, the little digital cameras you can buy, people are taking pictures with these things, you know, 10 megapixels, 2 megapixels, 1 megapixel, and they're on vacation, and they take a photograph, and they're taking photographs of hillsides, of, you know, in Hawaii, in the Canary Islands, in Spain, and they're taking pictures, and when they get home and they download their photographs, there's UFOs, clear UFOs in the shots that they didn't see at the time of the photography, which would have to mean that these UFOs are invisible to the human eye, but they're actually there. They're not optical illusions, they're really there because the camera can see into the invisible, can actually see these UFOs. Now, there are numerous cases, even recently. This amazing photograph taken by Robert de Siena, a former military officer in Brazil. He did not see this at the time of photography. He was just taking pictures, and he erased most of them. And you're looking at one of the most stunning photographs of a UFO I've ever seen. I mean, as we zoom in on this thing, we can clearly see it's metallic, it's disc-shaped, the sun is actually shining off of it, but he didn't see it when he took the picture. And the reason that is because, for example, the human brain pulses between 24 and 30 waves per second. It's like a camera. It's taking 24 and 30 pictures per second. If you run your hand in front of your face like this, you can actually see your hand leaves a little bit of a stroke trail, and it's not instantaneous. That's because the brain is taking pictures depending on the frequency of the brain, and that's why it doesn't see all of the information. In between the 24 or 30 frames or waves per second that the brain is pulsing, there's information. And if your brain could strobe in a much higher frequency fashion, you could capture the information in between those pulses. These UFOs are pulsing. Trevor James Constable's first book was called The Cosmic Pulse of Light, because they found that the UFOs have a pulse. They're vibrating at very high frequency wavelengths, which means the human brain isn't fast enough to capture them. Trevor James Constable, a New Zealand naval radar operator in World War II, was the pioneer of invisible photography. In the 1950s in California, Trevor took these amazing photographs of UFOs over Landers, Giant Rock, California, where George Van Tassel was channeling extraterrestrials. The photos are so stunning to me because they show translucent discs of light, UFOs with dark holes in the center, identical to the NASA STS-75 UFOs from the space shuttle in 1996, in February 1996. So we have the same UFOs confirmed from two different sources over 40 years apart. So if you look at very closely what's going on, NASA is saying that these are pieces of debris floating right in front of the camera lens, and as they get in front of the lens you get these fuzzy orbs of light called airy discs around them and giving the illusion they're UFOs. But if they were really that close to the camera, as NASA contends, how would they survive a long zoom? I did a very simple test with a digital camera, just like they're using. You hold a dime, which is bigger than any piece of dust you could find, and you hold it even a couple of inches or 6 inches in front of the camera. When you zoom in, you can't even see the dime. It disappears completely. And NASA's cameras zoom all the way in on the tether, which is 77 to 100 miles away from the camera, and the objects are still there. There's no way these are pieces of debris that are near the camera lens. There's no way, which confirms that they're actually as large as we say they are. They're passing behind the tether. The tether is 12 miles long. The UFOs are 2 to 3 miles wide in diameter, 1 to 3 miles in diameter, if they're right behind the tether. If they're further behind the tether than we think, they are much larger than that. And second, I confirmed with Dr. Joseph Newth III at NASA that NASA's video cameras can see into the near ultraviolet and the far ultraviolet, which is 2 bandwidths of ultraviolet, into the invisible spectrum where human eyes don't see.
The Discovery landing, a UFO got very close to it.
I was officer in charge of optical instrumentation at Vandenberg Air Force Base from 1963 to 66.
That's
our job was to
California?
photograph. That's California, so right there on the coast.
Right.
And our job was to photograph with high-speed instrumentation every missile launch from Vandenberg going down the test range. They wanted to find out if we could figure out a place to put a telescope where we could get a side view of the missile so that we could see all 3 stages of powered flight. So I went up to Big Sur, California, on a U.S. Forest Service road on Anderson Peak, and I installed a telescopic sight up there. And the Air Force flew in a huge catadioptric telescope from the Cape. It was built by Dr. Walter Manning at Boston University. They put the telescope up there, and with that thing, which had a focal length of 2,500 inches, we photographed an Atlas missile raising up out of the fog cover and flying down range. We got all 3 stages of powered flight, and as the dummy warhead and the package flew on down range, we were all celebrating the fact that we had seen the thing and accomplished the mission. We could see the whole 3rd stage, which has 2 rocket nozzles like this and one in the center, a gimbaled one in the center, filling our frame from about 160 miles. That was pretty exciting optics. And then on that telescope, we could see the warhead, the dummy warhead.
According to Jacobs, at this stage the rocket was traveling between 11 and 14,000 miles per hour when a saucer-shaped craft entered the frame.
It flew into the frame like this, and it shot a beam of light at the warhead. Now, remember, all this stuff is flying at several thousand miles an hour. So this thing fires a beam of light at the warhead, hits it, fires another beam of light, and then flies out the way it came in. And the warhead tumbles out of space. Now, when the lights came on, Major Mansman turned around and looked at me and said, "Were you guys screwing around up there?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "What was that?" And I said, "It looks to me like we got a UFO."
I was in the Air Force active duty after I graduated from the Air Force Academy in 1964 until 1971, and separated as a captain. In March of 1967, I was stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana, as a missile launch officer, Minuteman missiles. On an early morning of March 16th, 1967, I got a call from my security guard, primary security guard upstairs. We had about 6, as I recall, flight security airmen upstairs. I was downstairs 60 feet underground in a capsule, monitoring and controlling 10 nuclear-tipped Minuteman missiles. I got a call that morning that they were seeing strange lights flying in the sky. I disregarded that call.